Okay. All right. So as I was saying, so manual handling is obviously a very physical aspect of our day to day. So normally, I'd much rather be running these sessions face to face. Um, but unfortunately, due to COVID, I'm not allowed to run any face-to-face training right now. So how this will work is by attending today, you'll be marked as attended in my circuit, but with hopes that when we're back running face-to-face sessions again, that you try and get yourself to one of those as well. When that happens, it won't be another presentation. It would just be the practical exercises. Usually I come to you, or come not to you, but to your ward, and we run through some practical activities. So I find that's pretty useful because then you get to learn, stuff that's relevant to you. You're not learning a bunch of skills that you're never going to use. So I try and make them as relevant to everyone as possible. Okay, so today's going to be like a little bit of maybe a bit of a refresher. Some of this might be new information, it might be old information, but it's just going back to the basics, I guess. And it's going to be pretty broad as well, because I usually get a lot of different people from different departments, sometimes theatre, sometimes admin. So it's hard to sort of meet everyone's needs. But if at any point you have questions specifically to your department, please feel free to chime in. It's always good for everyone to sort of, discuss things and workshop and that sort of thing. All right, I guess we'll get going. Are we early or are we on time? We're good. All righty. So I like to start every session with a very simple but very important question. And that question is, who do you feel is responsible for keeping you safe when you're in the workplace?
Simply me.
Simply you?
Yeah.
Me.
You? Anybody else?
And my patient. And
Your
everyone.
patient, hopefully.
And everyone.
I wouldn't rely on my patients though for that, but it is a bit of a shared effort. Usually I get one or the other. It's all on me, or it's all on my organization, and it's a little bit of both. I mean, obviously it falls onto us to follow policies and procedures, attend training, that sort of thing. I could talk to you about manual handling till the cows come home. I'm really not going to be watching over your shoulder, making sure you do the right thing. You're not going to get a smack on the hand if you're lifting incorrectly. So we need to take on board good advice as we hear it. But you don't carry that burden alone. A lot of it does go onto Mercy, not just as a healthcare organization, but as an employer. They must adhere to the OHS Act of 2004, which states that, first of all, they must provide you with a safe working environment. Now, I can see behind you there, Richard, there's no broken glass, there's no live wire or wild baboons running around attacking people. It's pretty safe where you are, right? So they did their job there. Good work. Mercy must make sure that we have safe working equipment. Now, from time to time, we may argue that things need to be upgraded, but on the most part, they're pretty safe. No one could afford new equipment every year, so we need to maintain what we have until the point that it sort of becomes obsolete or there's something far greater on the market. Not so interesting, but policies and procedures, again, very important. It's Mercy's responsibility to make sure that we have the correct policies and procedures in place. They keep everything black and white down the line. We know where we all stand with policies and procedures. We have a lot of eyes watching over us, government bodies, that sort of thing. We're all constantly being audited and accredited. So our policies and procedures have to align with the standards, but they also need to be available to us, because they're important to us. If any of you want to know what's Mercy's stance on bullying and harassment, for instance, you have the right to access that information because it concerns you. That's a policy you need to know. And then finally, it's up to Mercy to make sure that we are all properly trained, that we know what we're doing. We're not just out there winging it. So thank you for attending today's training, and thank you as well for all the hard work you guys have been doing during this crazy time. But as you guys said, it's a bit of everyone. We need to look out for ourselves. We need to look out for one another, our fellow colleagues. If I see a fellow colleague doing something dangerous, I should speak up. Hey, calm down, you're going to hurt yourself. Or, even just being a bit more of a positive influence, is kind of like, hey, I noticed you were lifting this way. Have you ever considered lifting this way instead? I find that's less better on my back. Sometimes a workplace culture is a really tough nut to crack, and sometimes it's the only thing standing in the way of a safe work environment. People would rather get things done quickly than safely. And so trying to be that good influence, I guess what I'm trying to say is don't go waving your finger around on anybody's chest, you're doing it wrong. That won't get you very far. But if you role model the behaviors, you show that you're looking after yourself and you're putting your safety first, then hopefully your colleagues will want to do the same and want to follow suit. And then finally, yes, ourselves. It's up to us, really. Numero uno. We are no good to our patients injured. I think gone are the days where healthcare workers are expected to, sacrifice their bodies just to look after others. It's very noble, it's very big-hearted, but it's very short-sighted. You won't get very far. You'd hate to start your career and then have to finish it after only a few years. So we need to look out for ourselves. We need to make sure that we're safe. And it's also never acceptable for your occupation to infringe on your health. Even if my job is diffusing bombs or harsh chemicals, there really needs to be the proper safety precautions in place so that I can do that job safely. So we need to look out for ourselves in many ways. One way, and something that we probably don't talk about very often, is by knowing what our limits are. We're all very different physically. What I can do and what you can do will be very different. So at what point do we say no? So, no, I can't lift that. That's too heavy for me. I don't want to try. Or even sometimes a situation may erupt and we may be asked to participate, get involved and help out. But we need to, do I have the proper training? Do I have the proper PPE or equipment? I could get hurt. I could get sick. You need to ask, evaluate the situation and see how much at risk you are. And then even sometimes we need to be brave enough to say, actually, you know what, this situation that's going on here, emotionally, I can't be around it. We have lives outside of work, and sometimes in a hospital, in healthcare, we deal with very heavy issues. If something that's going on outside is very similar to what's going on inside work, we may need to ask ourselves if we're the right person to assist this situation. You might make the wrong judgment call because you're too close to the situation, or you maybe just can't handle having it in your work life and your personal life. So it's okay to say no sometimes. I think Mercy would rather us say no. I mean, we might get some niggles at the time, but I think in the long run, Mercy would rather us say no than nothing at all, and then we wind up injured or burnt out or worse. So that's kind of where I'm coming from today. Do you guys agree? Do you disagree? Are you happy for me to continue?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I guess at the end of the day, what we're really aiming for here is that you go home at the end of each shift and not think about work. Wouldn't that be nice? Go home, do the things you enjoy. I like to do the gardening. I've got dogs I walk. I can't do those things if all I can think about is, oh, shoulders sore. Geez, my back is sore. Because then that part of me, my back or my shoulders, it's still at work. It's still reminding me of work. If I'm constantly being reminded, I never switch off. And if I never switch off, I burn out. And that's what we want to avoid. That's what all safety training is really about. Okay, moving on. So today we're going to talk about ergonomics. We're going to talk about manual handling, and we're going to touch on ergonomics as well. Now, manual handling, you guys do a lot of it. I heard a study recently. This was an American study, so a little bit different than here. But this American study claimed that healthcare workers do more manual handling than construction workers. How do you feel about that? You disagree? Do you know any tradies? What do you reckon? No?
Oh, I don't know. Pretty stunning, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, America and Australia are very different. Let's not even talk about their healthcare system. But I think there's some truth to that. I would maybe argue construction workers do more heavy lifting in shorter spurts, whereas healthcare workers do more consistent manual handling throughout the workday. That's my opinion. And I guess it always depends on where you work and what you do. But okay, why is this training important? Why do we make you do this training? And then why are we going to make you do it again in a couple of years? And, we're probably going to run some other sessions in between those 2 years as well. So 27,000 Victorians are injured each year and go down that work cover path. Obviously, we don't want people injured. And obviously, work cover, if the big work cover claims, they can cost a little bit of money for the company. We'd rather spend that on new equipment and, new staff. But also there's been some studies that have shown that healthcare workers, because you guys are so dynamic, you go, you're action heroes of your own film, a lot of people turn to you for advice, a lot of people turn to you for help. So the second that you wind up on the couch, stop not doing anything, it can start to play on you a little bit. You know, especially those long-term injuries. You know, a lot of people don't always return to work. They lose their nerve, or they doubt their abilities, that kind of thing. So it's very important, because, you know, accidents do happen, that if you are in this situation, we try and get you back to work as quickly as possible. You have a really good return to work plan. And even if you're back doing light duties, 2 hours a week, you know, it's good. That keeps you in your community, keeps you abreast of what's going on, and you get to, you know, remain busy. It's important that you keep busy even when you're injured. Okay, so so we can see here that 10,000 of those claims are manual handling related. Healthcare very overrepresented there. So I'll talk about the top three reasons people in healthcare take time off work and claim work cover. So number one, obviously manual handling. What's some common manual handling injuries? What do you think from your experience?
Well, I'm a bit, yeah, I guess my thought is little contact I have with it is people's backs are a problem.
Yeah, backs, absolutely. Oh, everyone always says backs, no matter what department they work in. Yeah, absolutely. So back injury is number one. What's another reason that someone might take time off in this industry?
Mental health.
Mental health, yeah. So stress leave. We are taking a lot more stress leave than we used to, even before COVID. Now, I don't know, this is just my personal opinion. I don't know we're more stressed out than we used to be. I maybe think that we're just a little bit more open to discussing mental health and well-being than we used to. We're a lot more accepting of it. We used to keep that stuff pretty private. It's still private, but I think we're more confident in asking for that kind of time off now. And look, you know, Mercy recognizes this. Yes, we demanded a lot of you physically, but we also demand a lot of you emotionally as well. Things like compassion fatigue, vicarious trauma, which is why they offer things like the EAP, Employee Assistance Program, free counseling service, which anyone can access at any time. You know, from a manual handling point of view, I think our mental health and manual handling do go hand in hand, because if we're not really feeling ourselves, if we're a bit down and out, and we take that to the workplace, we can sometimes become a little bit complacent, maybe even disgruntled if it's a work-related stress. And that's when we sort of, we cut corners, or we rush tasks, or we just don't take the proper care that we should. And that's when we end up physically injuring ourselves, because we're not focused. So it's important, you know, if I've got aches and pains, I maybe go see a masseuse, or I go get dry needling or something like that. If I'm not doing so well up here, I need to figure out what I need as well. Do I, you know, counseling or whatever it is. It's important that we figure that out. And then what do you think the third reason might be? What's another common sort of cause of injury, do you think? A lot of people don't get this one. You've been pretty quiet there, Jathinta. I'm sorry. What do you think?
Yeah, the back pain is the first one.
First one, yeah.
Yeah, stress is the second.
Yeah. What do you think the third might be?
Oh, not
Should
sure.
I give it away? It is environmental hazards, slips, trips, and falls. Right? That's a big one. That's a big one anywhere. I would argue that's a big one in mining or retail. Like I could slip over working at McDonald's. A hospital setting isn't really unique to these kinds of injuries, but they're big. You know, they're common. You know, I tripped over walking down the road the other day. But you know, certainly can happen in a hospital setting, can't it? You usually don't have a lot of room to move. You know, maybe there's a patient on the bed, maybe they've got a visitor that day, maybe the visitor's just got their feet out, maybe they bought a few bags of presents, they just put them on the floor. We don't usually have a lot of room to move. Quite often there's like trolleys, things that can run over our toes, run into the back of our heels. And then sometimes, I hate to say it, but sometimes we work with smelly, disgusting bodily fluids, don't we? So there's lots of things that we could slip up over, the worst kind of thing you'd ever want to slip up over. So we need to be diligent when we see these hazards. If I'm walking down the corridor, I see a wet patch, I can't ignore it. I have to stand by it. Hey, someone get me a wet floor sign, but I can't leave it unattended. If I see a hazard, I need to report it. That's part of my obligation as an employer. All right, manual handling, this is what we're talking about today. What's manual handling to you? What do you think of when you think of manual handling? A lot of people have different variations on it. I'll get the ball rolling. Is it just heavy lifting?
Lifting, carrying, pushing, pulling, yeah.
Just about anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty broad. technically, I just took a sip of my coffee. I'm manually handling my coffee cup, right? So there's manual handling where you're not really doing much. And then there's a manual handling task, which is what we do in our day-to-day. And then there's safe manual handling practices. This is, how we perform those tasks in a way that do it safely. So it is very, very broad. Anytime that we are lifting, lowering, carrying, hold, you do a lot of holding in a hospital setting. Push, pull, throw, catch. I hope you're not throwing and catching in a hospital. One thing that's not on here is restraining a person, savannah or animal in high impact or sudden force. It's usually if someone falls onto us or, and then we have repetitive tasks. I'm sure you guys could name me a whole bunch of repetitive tasks in your day-to-day. The use of hand tools. Now, you don't have to be a plumber or a carpenter to use hand tools. Technically, your syringe, a syringe or a stethoscope or a thermometer, these are all hand tools. These are your tools of your trade. Operating machinery. Again, you don't have to be a forklift driver to operate machinery. The hospital bed is technically machinery. It has moving parts. It transports, it transfers. It is all classes machinery. So again, by this kind of rationale, you think about your day-to-day, how often you're on your feet, rushing around, doing stuff like you do a lot. You really do a lot. So I don't know. Maybe there is some truth to that. Healthcare versus construction. What department? Remind me again, Richard, where you are.
I'm in an emergency department and I'm a psychologist, so I'm not so up close with patients, but it happens. And moving at Mercy, I just sort of think you sort of brought up before about physical patients falling on you. That sort of happens if we restrain someone sometimes.
Yeah, restraining is a tough one. I'm from a disability background before here, and there was no restraint in disability. But here, you sometimes don't really have a choice because you've got the general public to look out for as well.
Yeah.
So it's a really tough one. Apparently, they don't do it in the UK either. I don't know how they manage that. And what about you, Jathinda?
I'm a student.
Sorry?
I'm student.
You're
studying.
a student.
Yeah.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah.
All righty, let's keep going. So back injuries, you said it first, Richard, and Jennifer, you said it as well. Watch your backs. So 35% of healthcare injuries are back-related injuries. That's the highest percentage of all the injuries. It all kind of breaks up into sevens after that, 7% shoulder, 7% neck, blah, blah, blah. But 35% is the highest, and it is back related. Now, we have a lot of muscle tissue in our backs, so we are more likely to pull a muscle, tear a muscle before we do any serious damage to the spine. In saying that, we should be aware of the spine. We should have a bit of an idea of what goes on back there, especially when we are exerting force or energy or picking something up. So now listen, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physio, I'm just a manual handling monkey. So I'm not going to talk too much jargon, but I will draw your attention to the vertebra, which is the bone, the vertebra or vertebrae, however you want to pronounce it. And these invertebral discs, these little blue discs that run up the spine. So every time we pick something up, our spine takes the load, and those little discs cushion the load. Without the discs, it'd be bone on bone. It'd be very painful. So we need to, they're tough little rubbery discs. If you're not familiar with them, I like to compare them to those little red wheels of cheese, the Baby Bell cheese, because they got a hard outer layer and they got soft cheese in the middle. So if you look here, the annulus fibrosus, that's the hard, waxy, rubbery outer layer. And then the nucleus pulposus, that could be the cheese in the middle, the soft part. But, they're tough little buggers, but they're not indestructible. I'm sure we've all met someone or know someone that has slipped a disc or ruptured a disc or, lots of things you can do to your disc. I also like to compare it to cheese because not many people have looked at a dissected back, an open splayed back, but most of us have been to the supermarket. So if you can imagine, you've got little tiny wheels of cheese running up and down your spine, maybe a little bit more sympathetic to how you put pressure on it. Maybe not, I don't know. That's just me. So let's look now at how easy it is to put pressure on the spine whenever we perform tasks. So the white here is the vertebra, the bone, and the red being the invertebral disc, or little wheel of cheese, if you will. So here we've got normal spine. This is us right now. We're not doing anything. We're kind of just sitting out, chilling. Even load. Now we can see that there is pressure on the disc. So this is when I pick something up, but I can manage it pretty well. I can keep it close to the chest, My center of gravity is, is pretty even. I'm evenly distributing the weight on my discs. It's something solid. It's not like a bag of liquid. It's not hard to manage. It's not like a puppy dog squirming around, anything like that. I'm holding it close to the chest and I can manage it fairly well. Now, uneven loads. Now, I think we do this a lot in healthcare because quite often we maneuver people and people are uneven. They're not boxes. They're all different shapes and sizes and weights and heights, etc. And abilities. Quite often we have to move people's limbs because they can't do it themselves. So let's imagine I'm going to lift. I've got a patient on the bed and I'm going to lift their leg for whatever reason. Maybe I'm doing continence care or something like that. But if I'm lifting a leg is uneven, right? It's let's say I've got the thigh in this hand, so it's thick on this hand and it's thin on that hand, on this arm. So it's probably a bit of weight difference. Maybe the center of gravity, maybe gravity is stronger here. Maybe they're wearing a big chunky shoe, so maybe this arm's heavy. I'm not too sure. But I'm trying to manage this awkward move. It moves a lot, this awkward weight. I probably also have to lean across the bed in order to lift this weight as well. So now I'm leaning over, so my spine looks a little bit like this, and I'm trying to manage an awkward weight at the same time. This is stuff we do every day, this kind of stuff. So we need to try and manage it as best we can, or at least just be aware of what's going on back there. So, if I'm just crossing the leg over, that's not so bad. But if I need to suspend that leg in the air for a period of time, I'd really want to try and be as underneath it as possible. Really think about trying to brace my core as much as I can so that I'm not relying on my back so much. In saying that, your back will look like this if you just bend over and pick something up. If I pick up an apple, my back will look the same. If that apple is made of lead, the pressure is going to be different, So, sometimes it's about the object as well. Excuse me, a little hoarse today. Torsion load. Now, torsion load is something, again, we do a lot in healthcare because usually we don't have a lot of room to move. So torsion load is when we pick something up. So we're putting pressure on the disc, but then we just twist the top half of our body. We're not moving the bottom half. We're only twisting the top. I'm putting something from here to there. So I'm essentially putting pressure and twisting. It's a little bit pepper grindy, right? So we do this all the time. Will you be working with babies, Jennifer? What department? Do you know where you're going to be?
I'm going to work as a RUSM.
Oh, okay, no worries. I usually use, those that work in NICU as a good example because quite often mum's in bed, they want to hold the baby's in the cot and the staff just like, here you go, and just quickly hand over without sort of moving. So let's look at torsion load a little bit closely because it's very common. Now, so this fella here, all he has to do is move this box from side to side. But in this image, he's probably not doing it so well. His feet are facing forward and he's only twisting the top half of his body. Now, when I think to times where I've done that and I didn't do it so well, I recall experiencing a bit of a dull ache, middle to lower of my back. Maybe I'm just loading groceries in the car or soil from Bunnings, something like that. And I'm not thinking about it. I'm just kind of like, yeah, I've got to go to the chemist after this. Yeah, I've got to pick up the fancy dog food. And then it's not until I get into my car that I'm like, I didn't do that very well. I'm a bit stiff now. So really, we want to try and get into the habit of assessing every manual handling task before we begin it. What's the task? What's my environment? What position do I need to be in? What does my body need? What form does my body need to take in a way, like a transformer almost? So he's not moving this box very well. He's also not holding the box very well. What's wrong with the way he's holding this box? How can he do it that better?
He could brace it.
Brace it. He could have it closer to the body. Absolutely. So like whenever we take a weight and put it further and further away from us, it becomes heavier. We're fighting gravity from a different angle now, and we start incorporating our shoulders, our shoulder blades. For me, I feel it right between my shoulder blades. If you were to go to the fridge right now and take out a 3 liter bottle of milk and hold it at arm's length, see how long you can do it for before it becomes uncomfortable. It doesn't take long. I'm sure you can hold it for about a minute, maybe 2 minutes, but I bet it becomes uncomfortable after about 20 seconds. Your back starts to clench up, your shoulders start to creep up close to your ears. So we really want to avoid that unnecessary strain. That's an unnecessary way to hold things. So let's look now. Now he has the box nice and close to the chest. Great. But let's look down at the feet. More importantly, now we see that the feet are now facing each destination as he moves. So a little rhyme I want you to remember: nose over toes. Yeah, nose over toes, nose over. Wherever my nose is going, my toes are coming with me at the same time. We all move as one. If I'm checking monitors and flicking dials, and that's not so bad. I can twist a little bit. The back The back's not completely made of glass. You know, I twist if I dance, but if I'm picking something up, I really want to avoid that twisting. So my shoulders, my hips, I might look like Frankenstein when I do it, but I move as one. I can do little pivot steps if I don't have much room, or I can take steps. But really, the result should be the same. My nose and my toes arrive at the same time. Okay, picking up a box. Now, I know you guys are clinical staff and you probably don't pick up very many boxes in your day-to-day. That's okay. It's not so much about the object, it's about body mechanics. Honestly, what I train clinical and non-clinical staff isn't a hell of a lot of difference. The tasks are different and the equipment's different, obviously, but how we move our bodies is usually the same. How we exert force is usually the same. So if you were to pick up anything up off the floor, this is what we recommend. First of all, stop and think. Before you do anything, just stop and think. Then, if you can, place your feet either side of the object. Then squat down real low. So bend your knees, feet nice and flat, squat down low, have a nice straight back and a nice straight neck as well. Try not to look up too much. I find if you crick your neck, you put an unnecessary strain on the neck. Hold on to the object as best you can. Get a good grip on that, whatever it is. Brace the upper body, brace the arms, and then push off from the ground. And then while you're pushing off from the ground, you're now lifting the object off the ground. Okay, so what have I just described there in boring detail? Lift with your legs, right? We all know that. We've all been told that before. Don't lift with your back, lift with your legs. But I think it's important to break it down a little bit because quite often I think we overcomplicate it or overthink it because we all know that to be the standard, you know, to lift with our legs, but maybe we get a little flustered that we're not going to do it right. Or because usually what I see when I ask people, can you please lift this box for me, is they know to keep the back straight and they know to squat down low. But what they usually do is they get down nice and low, and then while they're down close to the ground, they pick it up off the floor. And then they stand, which is fine, but it's kind of like picking it up twice. You don't really need to pick it up and then stand, just hold on and stand. It's the standing that does the lifting. As soon as we sort of get the arms involved, we kind of get the shoulders involved as well. But if you can just hold on tight, focus on the glutes and the quads, the bigger, stronger muscles. You know, it takes a little bit of brain coordination if you don't do it very often. You know, you want to, again, it's one of these things we want to try and get to the habit of doing before we start the task. Okay, now these three guys here, they're actually doing the same task. So you may recall previous trainers calling this a Tai Chi stance. I don't quite like calling it that, but you know, yeah, I guess it does look a little bit like Tai Chi. It's a half squat, so you're close to the ground, but it's also a half lunge. You have one foot in front of the other. So if I was to say, Jennifer, could you please do me a favor and fill up the photocopier? It's run out of paper. So now Jennifer has to go and get one of those blue boxes of reflex paper, right? Now they're quite heavy and awkward, heavier than you expect paper to be. So let's pretend now that box, it's not on the bottom shelf. It's not on the top shelf, it's on the second shelf. It's about knee height, which is an awkward place to put a heavy object. So I would hope that Jennifer doesn't just kind of bend down and grab it because that could potentially hurt the lower back. And I hope she doesn't just slide onto the shelf, reach in with one arm and pull it out like that, because that could hurt her shoulder, especially as soon as that box leaves the shelf and gravity kicks in, boom, she's going to take all that weight. So this is what we recommend, that you face the shelf, you face the item you're about to grab, one foot in front of the other, squat down nice and low. Now that you're low to the ground, you can lunge forward, grab hold of the box, hold on tight, lunge back. Now you want to stand, so you can stand in that same position with the feet staggered. And now that you're holding onto the box, you want to put it down because it's heavy. So you can lunge forward again to place it down and open it up, and etc. But again, you'll notice I didn't reach in. I didn't really use my arms. I kept my arms in close the whole time, and I tried to use my legs as much as possible. Right. So that's what we're getting at here. Now, I'm sure you've all done safety training before, and I'm sure you've seen images or diagrams very similar to this before. We're actually starting to move away from the you must do it this way, and we're more moving towards this is what we recommend, because we're all very different. We have different heights, different statures, different abilities. I'll give you an example. We have, quite an aging workforce, especially in our PSAs. Some of them are in their mid-set or early 70s. And if I was to ask them to squat low to the ground and pick up a box, they usually tell me to get stuffed because they don't, and some of them don't have the knees to do that. So, if it's more, a little bit of onus comes back onto us, and we need to, if something's uncomfortable, don't keep doing it that way. Like, this is what we recommend. But if you try it this way and it's uncomfortable for you, don't keep doing it this way. Don't hurt yourself just because I told you to do it this way. Figure out what's best for you, you know. Yes, your back isn't the strongest of muscles, but it can get stronger. You know, you can strengthen the back a little bit as well. So don't fret too much. Don't get over flustered. Just think about what's comfortable for you. If you want to go down on one knee and pick it up, that's fine. If you want to be in a staggered stance and then pick it up, that's fine also. Just listen to your body. What's it telling you? All right, let's go back to guy number 1 here. Stop and think. So like I said at the beginning, I know what my limits are. I'm going to say that whatever, let's pretend this little wooden man is me, and whatever this box is, I'm going to pretend that's too heavy. I can't pick it up. Whatever that box is, I'm not picking it up. It's too heavy for me. But it is in the way. I'm responsible for it. It's in my department. It's blocking the walkway. I do need to move it, but I can't pick it up. So what can I do? I'm going to sip my coffee real quick. What would you do? How would you move this object? Jennifer, what would you do?
I would ask for help.
I can ask for help. Yeah, that's a good solution. Absolutely. So I can say, Jennifer, can you please come give me a hand picking up this box? And we can go, you know, we'll pick it up, we'll lift with our legs. We'll go 1, 2, 3. Chances are, though, you'll stand on 3 and I'll stand on 4. We might accidentally knock heads at the same time. Have you ever helped anyone move a couch or just furniture? You ever notice that someone's usually doing most of the work more than the other person? But, you know, but look, maybe you and I, we work together a lot. We got good communication, good eye contact, and we're going to say ready, set, go instead of 1, 2, 3. So ready, set, go, and we lift together. All right. What if Jennifer's not around to help me? What else can I do?
I'd be thinking, I don't know, just whether there's any equipment I could use, anything I could.
100%. I always want to use equipment wherever and whenever possible. So Mercy actually has a no lift policy. You know, it's not advertised very often, but a lot of healthcare organizations now have adapted a no lift policy. You don't need to lift this day and age. There's enough equipment out there in the world, and there's enough sort of better techniques so that you don't have to. Look, clinical, definitely. The guys that take the deliveries and stuff like that, it's almost unavoidable to not do any lifting, but you just got to be smarter about it. So we've adapted a no lift policy. I'll just share with you something that my mentor would always say to us. 1, you are not a machine. So don't do the work of a machine. You don't go for regular parts and service. So look after yourself. And 2, you only get 1 spine in life. You don't get a second one. So don't risk your one and only spine picking things up off the floor willy-nilly, especially if you don't know how heavy it is. It doesn't matter who's asked you to do it. It doesn't matter how much you get paid to do it. I always want to question the how and the why. And 9 times out of 10, I really want to use equipment. Now, we have great managers. We have excellent managers, very competent, very capable, but very busy, especially right now during this pandemic. They may not recognize you are struggling with a certain task. Excuse me. So we need to advocate for our safety. Hey, look, I know you've asked me to lift this. It's a bit heavy for me. Can I get some help today? But in the future, can we please look at ordering a piece of equipment? So that's where we're coming from here. Now, listen, like I said, you guys are clinical staff, and this young lady here, she's carrying a box. So let's pretend that that's not a box. Let's pretend that's a patient who has fallen on the ground. Yeah. The same rules apply. I don't expect you to pick a person up off the ground. We have equipment that will do that for us. Hover jack, hover mat, a floor hoist, a ceiling hoist if you're lucky, but you do not need to pick a person up off the ground. I also don't expect you to catch a person as they fall. Are you guys aware of this?
I've only been aware of it. I'm only aware of it because I was made aware of it moving at Mercy previously. So it wasn't news to me until you guys told me. Yeah,
they used to train a guided fall, but that ended up causing a lot more injuries than not. Because if you think about it, I guess if you're trying to guide someone to the ground, you're trying to stop a fluid motion. Like, falling's quite fluid. If you try and be rigid against fluid, you're going to take a full force, especially if you're reaching out trying to catch someone's head. That's a hard impact on your arm that could travel up to the shoulders, that sort of thing. So we don't advise that anymore. So when I'm walking with a person, if I'm assisting someone, I never walk in front of them. I never walk behind them. I'm always at their side. So on the chance that they tend to go, I have to let them a little. And the idea there is that you're meant to be able, if that person falls on you and you hit your head or hurt your back. Now there's two people on the floor. Who's going to help you? So you need to be able-bodied to assess the situation, you know, call for help, get that piece of equipment. Is it a seizure? Do you need to start timing the seizure? Do you need to, you know, put them in the recovery position? All these things, you can't do that if you're writhing in pain on the floor. So that's the attitude there. If someone has fallen, and they can get up themselves, but they just need a little bit of help, I can do some prompting. I can do some, you know, I can go and get a big sturdy chair, place it next to them. You come on, mate, up you get, do lots of encouragement to try and get them up off the floor, but I can't lift them. I especially cannot lift them by the arm. I can't hook my arm under their arm and try and pull a person up. This is called a hook arm lift. And it's now considered, it's actually now considered elder abuse. And this is because there was a situation here in Victoria where an aged care facility, about 15 or so residents all had damaged shoulders. And it's from this technique. You usually see it when you're trying to get people out of a chair, you know, you hook the arm under theirs and you try and lift them out. I still see it sometimes. And I usually see it when a patient's in the bed, they want an extra pillow behind them and the nurse pulls them forward to put the pillow there. We have, you know, as human beings, we're problem solvers, and that makes the most sense, right? I have an arm and you have an arm. How about I hook it under your arm and pull you forward? But we have to resist that urge. So for the fella that's fallen on the ground, instead of trying to pull him up, I can try and get lower than him and give him a boost. I'd always rather push than pull. So if I can get in a position where I can use my legs to push, give us a boost on the bum, you know, that's all right. I'll boost him up the chair instead. For the patient that wants that extra pillow in the bed, instead of pulling them forward, I'm going to come to the side, put my arm across their shoulders, one hand on the front of the shoulder. I'm in a lunge position. I'm going to lunge forward, bring them forward, put that pillow there, and then I can lunge back to bring them back. I'm not pulling them. If a person desperately wants to get out of bed because they want to be sick or go to the toilet, again, I don't have to pull them out of bed. As soon as a patient starts like, can you help me? Can you help me? Use the machine, use the bed, you know, raise the bed head. Get their feet on the floor. Once their feet are on the floor, you can raise the bed itself, and now they're standing. You've lifted a person up, and all you did was push some buttons. That's really all we want to aim for here. Does that all make sense? Yeah. All right, great stuff. Okay, this little thing here, like genders aside, again, let's just avoid any kind of weight away from the body. Let's especially avoid anything too heavy above shoulder height. Putting something, you know, if you're putting something up on the top shelf, but if you're bringing something down and you don't know how heavy it is, well, now you're in trouble if it's too heavy for you, if it lands on your head, or you could really overarch your back. So I always want to be about chest height. So I will get a safety step, a safety ladder, so that I'm at the appropriate height. So it's around chest height. All right. Now, I'm not going to play videos because Zoom and YouTube never quite work. So what I usually do is I send videos at the end of the day for you to watch in your own time. I've just hand selected a bunch that I really like. If you would like more videos on certain tasks, please let me know and I'll track them down. We are actually in the process, I'm in the process of making our own educational videos, but that's going to take a little while. So in the meantime, I want to handpick ones that meet my kind of high standards. So yeah, bear with me. So if you want anything extra, please let me know. Also, if you want to be in an educational video, let me know because I need actors. All right, repetitive tasks. You know, there's a lot of repetitive tasks in our day-to-day. It doesn't have to be hand, you know, there's a picture of a hand here, but let's focus on the hands for a sec because they are, I guess, you know, our fingers are very intricate. They can do lots of amazing things, drawing, you know, switching dials and whatever, unscrewing screws, but they're not very strong. We should really be relying on them on strength repetitively, day in, day out. So when it comes to repetitive tasks, we need to try and recognize and reduce as much as possible. Things like RSI, repetitive strain injury, very, very common. Carpal injuries, they can, you know, very common and take a really long time to heal as well. Tennis elbow, again, very painful. So we want to try and avoid these kinds of tasks. I'll just give an example here. RSI, very common among pharmacists. Now, they, you know, you may think they don't do a lot of manual handling, but they have to, those child-proof lids, right? So which require pressure, twist, pressure, twist, pressure, twist. If I'm doing that hours and hours a day, yeah, I'm using the same body part over and over again. I'm creating more wear and tear. I mean, as we get older, our bodies go through wear and tear. But if I'm just using the one arm over and over again, I'm speeding up the process in this one arm, my shoulders, my elbows. So I really need to be careful. So recognize and reduce. First thing I want to know is there a piece of equipment that will do this task for me completely? Can I take all those pill bottles, throw them into a machine, and then all the lids automatically pop off? Does that exist? No, it doesn't exist, unfortunately. Okay, what about, is there a tool that will aid me in opening these lids? So instead of me using my fingers, can I now crank each lid open? Yes, it's still repetitive, but now I'm using the bigger, stronger muscles. Does that exist? No, that doesn't exist either. Okay, so now it takes a little bit of planning, you know? So instead of me opening up 100 pill bottles a day, I'm gonna open up 20, and you're gonna open up 20, and you're gonna open up 20, but I'm gonna break it up with other tasks. It takes a little bit of coordination to do that, but we need to try and recognize that, you know, some staff do the one big job over and over again. So we need to try and break up that task as much as possible, and, you know, always see if we can find equipment. I was talking to a pharmacist recently, and I used that example, and she was saying that they actually don't use many of the childproof caps anymore. It's all blister packs. But even still, pop, 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 pop. That's all your thumb. That over and over and over and over again. So if you are opening a lot of blister packs, may I suggest a cup, you know, and then push down into the cup, pop them into the cup. That's just, I know it sounds very pedantic, but you've got to think about the years and years of cumulative, you know, of doing the same task over and over again. Okay, can you all see what this guy here is doing? Yeah, don't do that. All right, just don't do it. Okay, so having said that, manual handling. I like manual handling. I think you guys do too. Otherwise, we wouldn't do this kind of work. I feel really lucky. I get to help the people that help the people, which is you guys. You guys are on the front line, helping people. You know, like I said, you're action heroes of your own film. You go. You're very dynamic. So I don't expect you to not do manual handling. I just want you to look after yourselves, value your safety, recognize the risks, make good judgment calls. Slow down. This is a drum I've been banging a lot lately. Please slow down. There's been a number of incidences lately with staff and patients have been injured. I know COVID, less staff, greater time pressures, but we need to slow down just to take a breath. Don't rush a task because you don't hate to cause injury. So this page here, it's to remind us, yes, we could all be exercising more and eating better. Sure, who couldn't? Obviously, exercise is good for you. Increase strength, flexibility. A good example, if I strengthen my core, I don't rely on my lower back so much. So things like yoga, Pilates, they're good for strengthening the core. If I have a good diet and I get plenty of rest, I have that even keel of stamina to last throughout my work day. I'm not going for the sugar hits and the caffeine hits, which is a total lie because I love sugar and I love coffee. But you get what I mean. Like if I've got a busy week ahead, instead of eating donuts, maybe I'll graze on some almonds instead to try and keep that plateau of energy. It's not the highest energy, but it's the longest lasting. This is because statistically, most manual handling injuries occur, this is everywhere, not just healthcare, most manual handling injuries occur either at the very beginning of a shift or at the end of a shift. It's rarely in between. So if you think about your early morning starts, you've got one eye open, it's cold outside, you haven't woken up yet, you walk in the door, as soon as you walk in the door, it's on, bam, you're rushing around, you're moving. You're at risk of pulling muscles because you haven't limbered up yet, you're not warm yet. Opposite end of the day, maybe you're absolutely exhausted, it's been a full-on day, can't wait to go home, 5 minutes before knock off and you get code blue, something like that, you're back in it again. And you just injure yourself through exhaustion, which is fatigue. So trying to maintain that level of energy it's tricky, it's really tricky. But also little things like you guys have been sitting down for a little while now. Richard, if you were to go back onto the floor, just to give a little stretch before you do, just give a little, watch the, someone made a brilliant suggestion the other day, and I highly, highly encourage this, and that is to make handover time, stretch time. So, oh yeah, tell me about bed 5. What about bed 2? And just run through everyone. So like it's good for the people that are starting their shift because they get to warm up. It's also good for the people that are going home because they get to cool down after a busy day. So I thought that was great. I want to make some posters up for that. All right, ergonomics. Now, how much time are you guys spending on your computers? Should I touch on this? Are you spending a bit of time? Yeah. All right, let's talk ergonomics then. So if you're not familiar with the term ergonomics, it's basically the gentle art of sitting very still for a long period of time. The human body isn't meant to sit at a computer for 8 hours a day. We're not really built for it. And we can actually get similar injuries to manual handling. Sore hips, sore shoulders, sore back. And it's not because we're holding an object. because we're holding ourselves in a posture for a long period of time. So it needs to be a good posture. It needs to be a neutral posture. You can't be sort of twisted like that or kind of, you know, because that puts our spine in different positions. And if we hold that for too long, we can cause some damage. So, all right. So if you spend a lot of time at your desk, good chair. That's the first thing you need. Adjustable backrest and adjustable height. It'd be also great if the seat itself could come forward a little bit. All right. This fellow here in the middle, this is the perfect example of good ergonomics. So as we can see straight off the bat, he's very rigid, he's very upright, a lot of right angles. So let's go through it real quick. First of all, elbows and knees. We can see that they're bent, but there's an inch clearance below and above the desk. So the knees aren't pushed into the table and your elbows aren't scraping the table either. Don't worry, if you don't, I'm going to send information on this at the end of the day. So elbows aren't touching either. So that takes a little bit of, you know, up, down, you know, the hydraulics of the chair. Once you've got that right, you go, okay, I like the elbows. I like where the knees are. Oh, but now my feet don't quite touch the floor. Maybe I'm a bit short, my feet don't quite touch the floor. If that's the case, get yourself a footrest because your feet need to be flat on something. If it's the ground, that's fine. But if they don't quite touch the ground, you know, get a footrest. Avoid crossing the ankles. I got this really bad habit. I tuck one foot behind one of the wheels of my chair. I don't know why I do that, but I have to remind myself, keep my feet flat. So feet are flat. Knees are bent, and there's about an inch behind the knees and the chair. So the front of the chair isn't into the back of the knees. Hips sit above the knees, never below. We used to kind of say even is fine. It is fine, but really try and have your hips slightly above, which is why it's good if the chair can tilt forward as well. Okay, your back is straight and it's supported in the lower lumbar with the backrest. It's not pushing you forward and you're not leaning back trying to find it. It's just there nuzzled in your lower back, supporting you. So when you feel yourself start to hunch, it's a bit of a reminder to keep yourself upright. Shoulders back, neck nice and straight. Now, the best way to have a straight neck is actually to have your screen or screens in a good position. So computer screen is at arm's length. Top of the screen is at eye level, so that I'm just glancing ahead and slightly downward. If my screen is up too high, I tend to like crick my neck and, you know, we're typing like that, like little church mice. Shoulders come up too close to the ears and we kind of do that. So we want to avoid that. Nice, straight, looking ahead. Now our wrists, we try and keep the wrist flat. So even though keyboards are adjustable, try and keep it flat and hovering, which is why it's important for the elbows to hover. And even the use of the mouse, don't flick the mouse from side to side, try and use the whole arm. Yeah, and if you're doing a lot of documents like click, paste, click, paste, click, paste, I even recommend learning to be ambidextrous with the mouse. I don't know anyone that's tried that yet, but I don't know, give it a go, see how you feel. That is the very, very basics. We can, you know, there's a whole sort of feng shui you can do with your whole workstation. It's basically the items you use the most are the closest to you, and the items you use the least are the furthest away. Things like your phone, use a headset, don't do that. What else? If you avoid sudden movements, I know that sounds really pedantic, but again, if you're typing away like, man, I'm getting a lot of work done, I've been typing for 2 hours, and then you suddenly knock your stapler on the floor, you have to resist the urge to go, bah, and quickly reach and grab it, because that sudden movement is what could jar your back. So if you drop something, don't fret, just spin around, place the object, bend over and pick it up. No sort of quick sudden movements. If you're hot desking, treat a hot desk like borrowing a car. Like you spend a few minutes adjusting the mirror, adjusting the seat, same deal. And also one last, again, listen to your body. There's a lot of fads out there, you know, high-low tables and sitting on a yoga ball or a kneeling chair. Sorry.
All good.
Joys of working from home.
It's all good.
So yeah, just be a little conscious of your body. There's a, you know, do you really need a high-low table, or do you just need to get up every so often and stretch? Like, I'm not going to say one item of furniture is better than the other. We're all very different, you know. Yeah, if you're experiencing severe pain, yeah, look at getting high-low tables and all that sort of stuff. But if it's just you know, if you maybe just need to stretch every so often. Now, ergonomics, it's not just sitting at a computer, it's holding a position for a long period of time. I don't know if you've ever been to this Coles or Aldi. You ever notice at Aldi, they're sitting down, the staff? Yeah, I don't know. That's their choice. It's both ergonomics. Standing and sitting is both ergonomics. I don't know why they made that choice. That's theirs. But yeah, so it happens all the time. So if you're handwriting a lot of documents, I would avoid being hunched over. So maybe mix it up, maybe sit down to write some documents, but then maybe stand up and write some others. Now, I always like to focus on this lady. One, because I have no idea what she's doing. Is she filing? Is she making lasagna? I can't quite tell. But look at her back. Look at her posture. I bet that's really uncomfortable for her. So if I was her, I would either want to be sitting down at that table, or I would want that table to come up higher to me. Now, let's replace the table with a patient who's sitting low in a chair, or maybe they're sitting in a bed quite low. Have either of you ever caught yourself in this kind of posture where you're talking to a patient or spending time with a patient? Again, NICU and places like that, those that work with infants, those staff usually are in this position because they assist with breastfeeding. And that usually, takes ages for the baby to latch. And so they're spending 45 minutes sometimes in that sort of posturing. So my general rule of thumb is if I'm going to spend more than a minute with a patient, I really want to be up their eye level. So if they're sitting down, I'm going to sit down too. So I'm at their eye level. If they're in the bed, I'm going to bring the bed up to me. So again, we're eye level, but I'm not going to sort of stand over them. It's actually quite intimidating having someone stand over you. If you do, like if you're in gem ward or anything like that, and you have to provide meal assistance, you have to be at eye level with a patient. If you're standing over a patient and trying to feed them, they're below you, it's very bad for the airways trying to feed a person. So for those that are meal assisting, please keep that in mind. Okay, now you guys aren't doing home support, are you? No? All right, let's skip through home support real quick. Please take breaks. You're entitled to your work breaks. Moving on, slip, trips, falls, we talked about that. Okay, we're going to circle back to manual handling now, and we're going to talk about protective behaviors. So as I said, manual handling tasks and then safe manual handling practices, how to do a task without injuring yourself. So earlier you heard me say no lift. We do not lift, and I would always rather push than lift or push than pull. So how do we push? We try and use our big leg muscles. Now, I'm a visual learner. I like a visual representation, just like with the baby bell cheese in the back. So I want you guys to imagine that you're walking down the beach and you see a whale washed up on the shore, and you want to push the whale back into the water, right? How are you gonna push this giant beast? Are you going to go up to it and start slapping it with your hands? I don't think that'll get you very far, will it? So in fact, your arms are probably going to do very little. You're probably going to place your hands onto the whale. You're going to have one foot in front of the other, and you get down nice and low, knees are bent. You've probably got the back heel off the ground. You're going to transfer energy from the back foot to the front foot. 1, 2, 3, you're going to lunge. You're going to try and push this whale by lunging with your legs, using your leg muscles. I want you guys to think of that whale just about any time you're exerting force or energy. So if I'm pushing a wheelchair, I don't push the wheelchair out like this, all loosey-goosey. My elbows are tucked in. I'm really close to the wheelchair. My hands are on the handles, and I push with my legs. Doesn't matter if the wheelchair is empty or there's a 200-kilo person sitting in there. I want you guys to just get into the habit of doing it this way. Your jobs are repetitive, so it's good to just keep going in that safe manner. So that's pushing one way, but sometimes there's lots of ways we need to push in a hospital. So let's pretend now I'm going to roll a patient on the bed. Again, I'm not going to walk up to the patient and just start slapping them like that. That won't get me very far. So I'm going to put one hand on the shoulder, one hand on the hip. I'm by myself, so I'm going to ask the patient to help me. Hey, can you reach over and grab the bed railing? Okay, great. Let's cross that leg over. Sorry, let's cross the leg over. Great. One hand on the shoulder. I'm in a lunge position. 1, 2, 3. I lunge, and that is how I roll a patient on the bed. I don't do that. I use my whole body. I also have spirit fingers or jazz hands, whatever you want to call it. I don't have my hands like that. As soon as my hands are underneath, I'm lifting. I want to keep pushing. So hands are on top, fingertips on top. Okay. Now I said that the patient was able to help me then. What if they can't help me? What do I need to do then? What if they can't assist in the role? What do I need to do?
Normally we use slide sheet.
Okay, yes, you can sometimes use slide sheet. Well, even before slide sheets, what do I need to do before I even get a slide sheet?
Like we bend one knee.
Not quite.
Not my area, sorry, guys.
That's all right. I need another staff member.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't, yeah, 2 staff. So
Two
general
staff.
rule of thumb, can a patient assist? Can they, if I ask them to help, can they help? Can they comprehend? If they can't do either of those things, 2 staff minimum. It's not about their weight, even if the patient's about 30 kilos, it doesn't matter. It's about their ability. So if they can't assist me, I need a second staff member. And you know, more staff if they've got a high BMI, maybe even more staff if they've got a compromising injury like spinal injury or something like that. So I'm going to call you over, Jennifer. You're going to come over here and you're going to help me roll this patient. Now, I'm not saying that you do this, but I do see this all the time. So Jennifer's going to come over and help. She's going to say hi to the patient. She's going to say hi to me. And then she's going to reach over the patient and then roll that patient over towards herself like that. Now, obviously, I don't want Jennifer to do that. One, it's not very good on her back. It's not very good on her shoulders. It's also not nice on the patient. No one wants to be grabbed at and pulled. So I am still doing most of the work. I'm pushing. You are really just guiding the roll. Yeah. So if you're helping me, you're bringing the shoulders, the hips over. You're making sure that knee comes down. You know, you're making sure there's enough room. I mean, I've got my head down low. I'm like a charging ball. I'm about to throw a person your way. You need to tell me if it's okay to do so. Is there enough room? Do we have all the things that we need? Are we going to perform like continence care or something like that? I'd hate to roll a person over, then you have to walk off somewhere. So we got work together. You give me the ready, set, go. I push, you roll. It's really just a guided sort of roll. Once the patient's on their side, you come in nice and close and hold them in place. Make sure they don't roll onto their face or they don't roll back onto me. And that's generally how it works. Yeah. So that's pushing a patient. Now, what else have we got in the hospital? We've got trolleys, beds, isolates, crash carts, food carts, lots of big, heavy things on wheels, sometimes tiny wheels that don't move very well. My advice to you is don't try and fight an inanimate object. You won't win. So if you're pushing a trolley this way, but it wants to veer off that way, don't jerk and twist and come here. Even in the supermarket, we do this. Come here, you. We're trying to control something that doesn't want to be controlled. First of all, we need to report that this wheel is wonky. We need to get that fixed. But you know, don't try and fight it. What I generally say is I want to face the direction that I want the trolley to go. It doesn't really matter if the trolley's not facing the same way. It doesn't have a back and front. It doesn't know which way it's going. It's plastic and metal. So if I can push from the side, I'm going to push from the side if that's easier for me, or I can push from the corner. Once I get to my destination, I'm going to do some maneuvering. But for the journey, if it's easier for me to push from any angle, I'm going to push from that angle that's easiest for me. One last thing, if we've got do you use much floor hoists? No, not really. I'm just trying to think of something big and heavy that we sometimes have to steer. If I'm pushing something that's big and heavy and I want to turn a corner, again, instead of me using my waist, instead of doing that big twist like that, I'm going to create a pivot point, which a turning circle. It makes it really easy for me to spin on the spot. So what if I'm turning left? I put on the back left brake. This only works if the wheels have individual brakes. I put on that back left brake. I come around to the side. I push it so it spins facing the direction I want it to go. Now that it's facing the direction, take off the brake and continue my journey. Yeah. So that's pushing. That's all the pushing tasks that I can think of off the top of my head. But sometimes we need to pull. Some tasks require us to pull. A patient transfer is a good example of that. Pat slide, slide sheets. We're going to pull a patient across from one bed to the other bed. Now, again, I don't really use my arms. I'm not in a rowboat. I'm going to hold on to the slide sheet. I'm going to lock out my elbows, straighten my back, one foot behind the other, and I'm going to lunge back. I'm going to use my body weight to pull instead of my arms. I see a lot of people struggle with slide sheets, and it's usually because they pull them up. You know, a slide sheet needs to slide across. It needs to go horizontal, not upwards. Yeah, I see people struggle with slide sheets all the time. If you're struggling with slide sheets, it could be a few things. One, because they're meant to make your jobs easier, not harder. If you're struggling, one, maybe the patient's too heavy. Anyone sort of over 100 kilos, maybe you want to look at a hover mat instead. What else? Slide sheets lose their slipperiness after a few washes, after they've been through the wash a few times. An old slide sheet, you can tell an old one from a new one. An old one looks and feels like really worn in silk, like grandma's silk, that kind of thing. Whereas a brand new one should look like, have you ever gotten new money from the bank? Really shiny, slippery money? That's what a new slide sheet should feel like, really slippery. So always test a slide sheet before you use it, rub it together. Is it slippery? And also, I always use 2 slide sheets for on-bed tasks, not one folded in half, 2 slide sheets, one on top of the other, and only the top one moves, side to side, up, down, diagonally. You have a lot more versatility with 2 slide sheets, a lot more room for correction if you make any mistakes. Okay, but that's pulling. So if I'm getting an empty wheelchair out of the supply closet, same goes. I lean back. Okay, so that's push-pull. We talked about moving our feet. We talked about bracing our upper body. We talked about a pivot point or bracket point when steering heavy objects. Always use safety equipment. You have safety equipment. It's there for you. Please use it. If you don't have it, please ask for it. And if you don't feel comfortable asking for it, ask me to ask on your behalf. I'm quite happy to do risk assessments, equipment suggestions, or I can workshop certain tasks. If you and your staff are having trouble with one particular task, you don't have to do a full training session like this. I can just come and help. All right, stop if you feel any pain or discomfort. Don't ignore the aches and pains. That's your body trying to tell you to stop doing that. That could be the difference between a pulled muscle or a torn muscle. So just, weigh up the odds. Always ask for help. Don't try and do tasks on your own, and always be careful. Okay, one last thought before I let you go. I want you to think about your really difficult tasks, and I want you to ask yourself, how can I stop doing this? Now, and I don't mean, I don't mean shirking your responsibilities or making the new kid do it. How can I make this task easier for myself? So first thing I want to know is there equipment? There's so much equipment out there in the world. Sometimes you don't even know it exists. Is there equipment that can do this task for me? Can I change my environment sometime? I was helping a ward the other day. They were struggling with a certain task, and we just realized that if they moved the chair from this side of the room to that side of the room, they had a lot more room to access, and there wasn't so much bending and twisting and awkward posturing. Can objects change? Can the way that I do the task change? The time of day change? Can I take one big task and break it down into smaller tasks? This is what I want you guys to ask yourself. Chances are you've already come up with a solution, but maybe you just haven't thought to put it into practice yet. But as I said, I'm always happy to help you come up with solutions, ideas. Maybe you've invented something that doesn't exist yet. That could be cool. It always starts somewhere, right? So maybe you can retire off your patent, in which case I get 5%. All right, thank you so much. That is the end of the session. I usually leave this part if anyone has any questions. With COVID, it's harder for me to get on site. So is there any tasks right now that you and your team are struggling with that you would like to workshop really quickly? You can think of. No?
No, I reckon it'd be great. It's just a matter of keeping it at the front of my mind, about the things I do every day and keeping a good habit.
Yeah. Someone made, again, another suggestion. Someone suggested that they set their alarm like every hour or so, just to kind of check, especially if you're sitting at a desk for a long time. Set the beep, 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 and then you go like, oh, am I hunching over? Are my feet flat? Or even just kind of when you're walking around, like, am I walking around the best way that I could? Am I lifting this box the way that I should be? Just little reminders, or tie something or string around your finger. But always happy to help. If you think of anything, please contact me. Like I said, I will send you some videos and some reading material. But hopefully I will see you all soon, face-to-face, fingers crossed.
You did a great job. Thanks, Alex.
Oh, thank you so much, Richard. I appreciate it.
See you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Jennifer. Have a good day.
You too. See you. Bye.
Bye.